Well, it's a money grab, believe it or not, because, listen, Carmelo Anthony's got 2 years, $54 million left on his deal. But if he ends up going to Houston with one of his best friends, who also happens to be a client of CAA, that would be Chris Paul, then you've got an opportunity to advance to the Western Conference Finals at least. You pull that off, okay, then the combination of you two along with James Harden puts both in a position to get an exponential amount of money. Remember, Chris Paul, according to my sources, Max, he was going to get a fifth-year offer from the Los Angeles Clippers. They were willing to dole out in excess of $200 million. I think it's about $207 million to be exact, but he's bet on himself. Ultimately let them know he wants to go to Houston. They traded him to Houston. Now he's entering the last year of his deal. 32, 33 years of age, it might be risky. So if you're his representatives, if you're CP3 himself, obviously putting yourself in the best position is going to facilitate you getting paid. And if you're Carmelo Anthony, you're thinking the same. But when it comes to Carmelo Anthony, I think he's being a bit short-sighted because weeks ago he had both Cleveland and Houston on the list of teams that he was willing to go to and waive his no-trade clause to do it. But now, as Adrian Wojnarowski pointed out last night and today, this morning on Mike and Mike, now only Houston is on the list. So for some reason, Melo has soured to some degree on Cleveland. I don't think that's wise. Melo goes to Cleveland, finds a way to get himself to Cleveland. Then he and LeBron are going back to the NBA Finals. In LeBron's case, Melo will be going to the NBA Finals for the first time in his career. And if he pulled something like that off, who knows what he could do. But because he has 2 years left on his deal, he would still be approaching the last year of his contract. And as a result, clearly he isn't confident that he'd be able to get paid the way the situation will facilitate him getting paid in Houston. So that's what's going on here. But unfortunately, what it comes down to, Max, is that, again, it's about the money. Carmelo Anthony has made money, never played in an NBA Finals, only one trip to the conference finals. I would like to see him prioritizing getting to the finals and letting the money come from it as opposed to getting the money first. But that's just me.
That's all interesting reporting, and it makes sense, Stephen A. Smith. I will say that it makes sense to me that if Carmelo has 2 years left on his deal, that he wouldn't want to be dealt to Cleveland, where it looks like LeBron's taken off next year at the end of the season. So you make a finals, you're going to be slaughtered once again by the Golden State Warriors. If you make the finals, I think they'd still beat Boston with Carmelo instead of Kyrie. But if you make the finals, which I think they would, you're going to get slaughtered again by Golden State. And then what happens? LeBron leaves you in Cleveland. Like, Dan Gilbert needs to know something. No one wants to be in Cleveland. There's not a single player who wants to be in Cleveland, Dan Gilbert. The only reason you're relevant at all is because LeBron James happened to have been born in Akron. And be from there. So Cleveland's in his backyard. He's there. And that's the magnet that attracts people to Cleveland. So I understand that from Carmelo's point of view. As far as the Rockets are concerned, though, I look at it from Daryl Morey's point of view. A guy who's at the cutting edge of the analytics and everything and always fielded a competitive team, even when he didn't have the star players, has seen opportunities to acquire star players. So for people scratching their heads, why would Daryl Morey, the progressive kind of GM of Houston, want Carmelo to go with Chris Paul and James Harden? None of that seems to fit. And you're right, it doesn't quite fit. But what Daryl Morey also understands, I believe, is that if you have players of a certain caliber, it doesn't matter as much how they fit. You don't have to rely as much on the advanced analytics. You have three guys who are three of the top 20 players certainly in the league, and two of them are top 10, let's say, in Harden and Chris Paul. You're going to be very good. And the outside chance you have at an upset in the Western Conference goes up. I think that's what the Rockets are thinking.
Yeah, and you know what, that has a lot to do with it, and that's clear. But in the case of Carmelo Anthony, getting back to what you said about him in Cleveland, it absolutely makes sense why he wouldn't want to go to Cleveland over Houston. We get all of that. But at the same time, why stay in New York? Because it's a similar situation or worse situation in Cleveland. There's very few situations that are worse than Cleveland. So I'm not telling Melo that Houston should not be considered a better situation. I'm saying if that doesn't happen and there was a way for you to get to Cleveland, and I'm not saying there is, because if I'm Cleveland, why would I want that? But if there's a way to get you to Cleveland, it's something you need to entertain because you've never won.
Because the price you pay for getting to the championships and being beaten is half the season. The following year, you got to live in Cleveland instead of New York. That's a steep price for Carmelo.